Love Notes, a secret passion between a music teacher and her beginner student, lesbian passion. The first notes of music can open more than melodies, they can open hearts. In a quiet practice room, where the sound of piano keys and violin strings fill the air, a simple lesson begins between a devoted teacher and her eager student. What starts as instruction soon transforms into something deeper, something neither of them expected. A connection grows in the pauses between notes, in the glances they try to ignore, and in the emotions that can no longer be silenced. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. This way, you won't miss any of the unforgettable stories of love, courage, and discovery we share here. I arrived at the Rainier Arts Conservatory on a gray Seattle afternoon, carrying a rented violin case that still had a barcode sticker on it. Rain streaked across the tall windows, and the smell of old varnish and rosin clung to the hallway. My chest felt tight, not just from nerves about learning an instrument at 29, but from something deeper. I didn't know what I was looking for, only that I was hungry for something new, something alive. Her studio door was propped open with a stack of theory workbooks. Inside, a small upright piano sat against the wall, a mirror leaned toward a row of music stands, and one tall plant stretched toward light that barely existed. She stood at the window adjusting a metronome, her black sweater sleeves pushed to the elbows, her hair braided neatly into a low knot. "Hi," I said, my voice too bright. "I'm Ava Bennett, the beginner." She turned. Her presence felt composed, like the first calm note in a storm. "Ava," she said softly, letting the syllables land with care. "I'm Lena Morell. Come in." I set the case on a chair and fumbled with the latches. My clumsy hands seemed louder against her quiet steadiness. "First lesson?" she asked. "First anything," I admitted. "YouTube probably made me worse." Her mouth curved, not mocking, just amused. "Videos don't know your shoulders. Let's start there." She guided me to stand before the mirror, no instrument yet, just posture. "Unclench your jaw. Drop your shoulders." She placed a folded cloth on the violin's chin rest and waited until I felt less like a stranger in my own body. She hovered close enough that I felt her warmth but not her touch. "Pretend you're holding a bird," she said in a low tone. "Secure, not trapped." "I don't usually hold birds," I muttered, earning a laugh that felt like a sudden light in the room. We stayed with basics: stance, balance, breath. Only then did she hand me the bow. My heart pounded harder than it should have for a piece of wood and horsehair. "Light wrist," she instructed, standing behind me. "Imagine painting a line you can't see but know is there. And when the sound croaks, because it will, don't flinch. Just breathe." The first note was a door hinge. I winced. "Don't punish the note," she said softly. "Invite the next one." The second attempt was still thin but less apologetic. She nodded, approving without overpraise. My cheeks flushed. Halfway through, the rain thickened against the glass. I managed a sustained tone, imperfect but honest. Lena tilted her head with the smallest smile, and pride warmed my ribs. We paused for tea from a battered kettle on her hot plate. She leaned on the piano, watching me as if solving a puzzle she enjoyed. "Why violin?" she asked. I could have said, "For a challenge," but truth pressed harder. Last fall, I stood outside Benaroya Hall during a rehearsal. Music spilled into the street. People walked by like it was nothing, but I couldn't move. I wanted to belong to that sound, even if I'm terrible for a while. Recognition flickered in her expression. "Belonging is a good reason," she said. "Being terrible is a great beginning." Her words settled in me like seed. The rest of the lesson blurred between laughter and silence, her patient corrections and my awkward attempts. At the end, she slid a folder across the piano. Inside was a diagram of fingerings and a handwritten note. "G major, slow is honest. Breathe on bow changes." I traced the handwriting as if it held a hidden message. "If I bring baked goods instead of flowers, does my tone improve?" I asked. Her eyes sparked. 5% per croissant. As I packed up, I realized I didn't want to leave. At the doorway, she adjusted the stack of theory books propping the door, but one slipped. Reflex had me grab from the other side. Our hands pressed together for a brief, accidental second over the cover of Counterpoint in practice. She drew back, her voice soft. Careful. The word carried weight I couldn't name. I left with the rain drumming on the roof and my chest buzzing with questions I hadn't known to ask. On the stairs, I texted my friend Danny. First lesson? Did she make you cry in a good way or a bad way? I typed back good way, then deleted I'll explain later. But something pulled me back. I climbed the stairs again and paused at Lena's door. It was nearly closed now, light spilling in a thin line across the floor. A second voice echoed inside, a woman's voice, sharp but controlled. You can't keep doing this. Lena's reply was low, too muffled to catch. My pulse jumped. I reached for the doorframe, rehearsing an excuse about forgotten notes. When the door opened, another woman stood there holding a folded scarf like evidence. She glanced at me, then at Lena. And Lena, calm, steady Lena, looked down as though searching for words that refused to arrive. The woman in the doorway glanced at me once more before slipping past without another word, leaving only the faint scent of her perfume. Lena watched her leave, her jaw tight, then quickly closed the studio door as though shutting away the tension that had just spilled out. I didn't realize you were still here, she said, her tone softer now, but guarded. I clutched my violin case to my chest. You forgot the folder. It was a flimsy excuse, but technically true. I had left it on the chair. She handed it to me carefully, her eyes steady on mine. Sorry about that, she added, almost in a whisper. Some conversations belong outside the music room. Her words should have been enough, but my mind raced with questions. Who was that woman? A colleague? A partner? I told myself it didn't matter, that I was only here for lessons, but the knot in my chest betrayed me. That night, at home, I spread the diagrams across my kitchen table. I tried to focus on fingerings, on the way the bow should feel balanced between thumb and pinky. But every time I traced her handwriting, I thought of the way her hand had brushed mine, the way her eyes had softened when she said belonging is a good reason. By the second lesson, I was restless with anticipation. The rain had been replaced by rare Seattle sunlight, and Lena's studio seemed brighter, less confined. She greeted me with a warm smile that erased some of the unease from the week before. You practiced, she said after my first attempt at G major. You're breathing with the bow. That's progress. The pride in her voice warmed me, and suddenly the awkward sounds I'd made at home felt like stepping stones instead of failures. As the lesson went on, our rhythm fell into something that felt strangely natural. She corrected my posture with the gentlest adjustments, fingers brushing against my shoulder to lower it, her hand guiding mine along the bow for smoother strokes. Each touch lingered in my mind longer than it should have, echoing louder than any note I played. During a break, I found the courage to ask. The other day, that woman. Is she a teacher here too? Lena hesitated, pouring tea into two mismatched mugs. She used to be, she said finally. But not anymore. There was no explanation beyond that, and the way she avoided my eyes told me I shouldn't push. Still, curiosity gnawed at me. Instead, I changed the subject. Why did you start teaching? That made her smile again, and her whole face softened. I was a performer once, piano recitals, chamber groups, traveling. But teaching gave me something performing never could. A way to watch music transform someone in real time. To help them find a voice they didn't know they had. Her words settled over me like a confession, intimate and vulnerable. And for the first time, I realized she wasn't just guiding my music, she was teaching me something about myself. By the end of the lesson, I had managed to play a short piece without collapsing into squeaks. Lena clapped softly. See? Already, you sound less like a beginner and more like someone telling a story. The compliment made my chest tighten. I wanted to be that story. As I packed up, I blurted out, "Do you ever stay after lessons? Just to play for yourself?" She raised an eyebrow. Sometimes. Why? Because I'd like to hear you, I admitted, my voice unsteady. For a long moment, she studied me as though weighing the risk. Then she walked to the piano and sat down. Her fingers brushed the keys with the same tenderness she had shown me with the bow. The melody she played was soft, almost mournful, filling the room with something raw and unguarded. I stood frozen, every note tugging at me, unraveling something I didn't know I'd been holding back. She wasn't performing, she was confessing, wordless but unhidden. When she stopped, silence filled the room like a secret we both now shared. "That was beautiful," I whispered. She looked at me then, really looked, and for a moment it felt as if the air between us thickened. Something unspoken passed, a current neither of us named. The spell broke when her phone buzzed on the piano. She checked the screen, her expression darkening. Without explanation, she set it face down, shutting the world out again. I gathered my things, but as I reached the door, she said quietly, "Ava, there are things about my life I can't explain yet. But I hope you'll keep coming back." I turned to her, my pulse racing. "I will." On the bus ride home, I replayed every moment. The way her fingers had danced across the keys, the way she'd looked at me as though she wanted to say more but couldn't. That night, lying in bed with the violin case beside me, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just fascinated by the music. I was falling for her. And yet, the unanswered questions, who that woman was, what Lena couldn't say, hung over me like shadows. The next lesson couldn't come fast enough. But when I arrived the following week, the door to her studio was locked, a note taped to it in her neat handwriting. Lesson cancelled. Family emergency. My heart pounded as I stared at the note, the rain returning in sheets outside. Emergency. Family. The words echoed, vague and heavy. I didn't know if it meant she was gone for a day or for good. The note on her studio door haunted me for days. Family emergency. Those two words rolled around in my head with 1,000 possibilities. Was she all right? Was someone sick? Or was it about the sharp-voiced woman I had seen leaving her studio that first week? I checked my phone constantly, even though Lena had never given me her number. All I had was the school's front desk, and calling felt like crossing a line. Still, the emptiness of my evenings grew unbearable. Practicing alone in my small apartment felt like talking to a wall. Every note fell flat without her steady encouragement. After nearly a week, the studio door was open again. I walked in with my violin case clutched tight, my heart pounding with equal parts relief and fear. She was there, sitting at the piano, but her posture was heavier, as though the music she loved had betrayed her. "You're back," I said softly. She lifted her head. "Just sorry about last week. My mother, she's ill. I had to leave town." Her voice carried exhaustion, and something in me ached to comfort her. But I wasn't sure what I was allowed to offer. I was only her student, and yet I wanted so much more. "I'm sorry," I said. "If there's anything—" Her eyes flicked up to mine, tired but grateful. "Thank you. But let's play. Music helps." We started with scales, but her mind wasn't fully there. She corrected me gently, her voice thinner than usual. I stumbled more than I should have, distracted by the shadows beneath her eyes. Finally, she stopped and leaned against the piano. "Do you ever feel like the world expects you to be strong, but inside you're barely holding on?" she asked suddenly. Her question stunned me. "All the time," I admitted before I could think. Her gaze softened. "I thought so." In that moment, the distance between teacher and student blurred. We were just two women, standing in a small room with our defenses down. We shifted to simple duets, her on piano, me on violin. My notes squeaked and faltered, but she adjusted, weaving her playing around mine until it almost sounded intentional. It felt like dancing clumsily with someone who never let you fall. Between phrases, our eyes met more than they should have. Her expression wasn't pity, or even amusement. It was something deeper, something that made my chest ache. When we finished, silence lingered longer than it should have. I set the bow down, my hands trembling slightly. "That was better than before," she said quietly. "It felt different," I replied. My voice was low, almost uncertain. Like we weren't just practicing. Like we were talking. Her lips parted as if she wanted to respond, but the words never came. Instead, she moved closer, adjusting my bow hold again, though she didn't need to. Her fingers brushed mine, lingering for one heartbeat too long. The air thickened. I forgot the violin in my hands, forgot the world outside. All I saw was the curve of her jaw, the way her braid loosened near her temple, the storm in her eyes. And then the door creaked. We both startled as the sharp-voiced woman from before stepped inside without knocking. She froze when she saw us so close, her eyes narrowing. "Still working late?" the woman said flatly. Lena stepped back quickly. "It's just a lesson, Rachel." Rachel's gaze slid over me like a blade. "It doesn't look like just a lesson." My face burned. I wanted to vanish into the floor. Lena's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. The silence was louder than any denial. Rachel crossed her arms. "You never change," she muttered, then turned on her heel and left. The door slammed behind her. The silence afterward was unbearable. My pulse thundered in my ears. I couldn't stop replaying Rachel's words. "You never change." What did that mean? Lena let out a long breath, staring at the closed door. "I'm sorry you had to hear that." "Who is she?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. Lena hesitated, then answered. "She's someone from my past. We worked together here. And we were more once. It ended badly." Her honesty hit me like a wave. A part of me wanted to press further, to ask if Rachel still had a hold on her heart. But another part knew I wasn't ready for the answer. "I should go," I said, my voice shaking. She reached for me, then stopped short, her hand hovering in the air. "Ava, don't let her words scare you away." I wanted to stay. God, I wanted to stay. But the confusion, the jealousy I had no right to feel, the danger of wanting more than I should, it all crashed over me. I grabbed my case and hurried to the door, my heart tearing itself in two. Outside, the rain had returned, soaking me instantly. I stood on the steps of the conservatory, trembling, unsure if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life by walking away. I avoided the conservatory for 3 days, telling myself I was too busy, that practicing alone was enough. But the truth was, I was afraid of what I'd seen in Lena's eyes, afraid of Rachel's words, afraid of what it meant for me to want something I didn't fully understand. On the 4th day, my phone buzzed. An email from the conservatory, student showcase this Saturday. All beginner students expected to perform one short piece. My stomach dropped. I had barely managed to play scales without squeaks, and now I was supposed to perform in front of an audience? Panic took over, but beneath it, a stronger urge pulled me back. If I was going to face this, I needed Lena. I walked to her studio that afternoon, rehearsing excuses for my absence. The door was closed, but music spilled through, furious, aching chords hammered into the piano. It didn't sound like practice, it sounded like an argument with the keys. I knocked softly. The music stopped. "Ava," she said when she opened the door. Relief flickered across her face, quickly shadowed by weariness. "I got the email," I blurted out. "The showcase. I can't do it alone." Her shoulders softened. "You won't. Come in." Inside, the room felt different, charged. Maybe it was me, maybe it was her. Either way, the air between us was restless. She guided me through the piece, just a simple folk tune arranged for beginners. My fingers stumbled, my bow screeched, but she stayed close, her hand steadying mine, her voice calm even as her eyes betrayed exhaustion. Finally, I set the violin down. "Be honest. Am I a disaster?" She laughed quietly, shaking her head. "You're not a disaster. You're a beginning. And beginnings always feel like falling apart before they come together." Her words sank into me, warm and heavy. I wanted to believe them, not just about music, but about us. I dared to ask, "Will you be at the showcase?" Her expression darkened. "I should be. But Rachel, she's still part of the board. If she decides..." She stopped herself, then shook her head. "It's complicated." Anger sparked in me. "Why does she get to decide anything about you? About us learning?" Lena's eyes snapped to mine, sharp. "Us?" she repeated, her voice low. I froze, heat rushing to my face. "I mean, my lesson." "Sorry, I didn't." But the word had already hung in the air, undeniable. Before she could respond, the studio door burst open. The conservatory director stood there, his glasses askew, his face tense. "Lena, I need a word," he said. His eyes flicked to me. "Now." She stiffened but followed him into the hall. I stayed behind, heart racing, straining to hear. Their voices rose and fell, muffled by the wall. Words floated through, inappropriate, complaints, professional boundaries. My stomach twisted. I pressed closer to the door, desperate. Then Lena's voice rang clear, sharp with fury. "She's my student, not your scandal." The hallway went silent. A moment later, the director stormed away. Lena returned, pale and shaken. "What happened?" I asked, my throat tight. She shut the door behind her, leaning against it. Rachel filed a complaint. She said I was crossing lines with students. That I was distracted. The implication hit me like a punch. Because of me? Her silence was louder than any answer. I felt dizzy. "So, what does this mean?" "It means," she said slowly, "that everything we do now will be watched. That if I let anything slip, even the smallest sign, they'll use it against me." I wanted to argue, to tell her the music mattered more, that we mattered more. But fear wrapped around my chest. "Maybe I should quit," I whispered. Her eyes widened, hurt flashing like lightning. "Don't you dare. Rachel wants you gone. Don't give her that victory." The raw intensity in her voice shook me. She moved closer, her hand hovering as though she wanted to reach for me but didn't dare. "Promise me you'll perform at the showcase. Promise me you'll stay." My breath caught. "I promise." She exhaled slowly, as though clinging to that single word. We practiced again, though neither of us could focus. Every note was weighted with what we weren't saying. When I finally left, the sun had dipped low, turning the wet streets gold. I should have felt relieved, but instead I carried a storm inside me. At home, I opened my violin case and stared at the bow. My reflection in the shiny wood looked like a stranger. I thought about Lena standing so close, about the accusation hanging over her, about the risk of even being in the same room together. And yet, beneath all the fear, one truth pulsed steady and undeniable. I wanted her. The showcase was 3 days away. I would have to face an audience, and maybe Rachel. As I turned out the lights, a thought gripped me, terrifying and exhilarating all at once. If I played well enough, if I proved I belonged, maybe it wouldn't just be my music Lena was listening to. The night of the showcase came faster than I could prepare for. 3 days of restless practice had left my fingers raw, my nerves frayed, and my heart so heavy with anticipation I could barely sleep. Still, nothing could have prepared me for the sight of the conservatory's recital hall packed with strangers, students, parents, colleagues. And in the back row, Rachel, her arms crossed, watching like a hawk. I clutched my violin case so tightly my knuckles ached. Lena stood near the wings, her hair loose tonight, cascading over her shoulders instead of bound in a braid. She looked both radiant and fragile, like a candle flame that could be blown out with a single breath. "You'll be fine," she told me softly, straightening the collar of my blouse. Her fingers brushed my skin, sending sparks through me. "I can't breathe," I admitted. "Then breathe for me," she said. Her tone was so gentle, so private, that for a moment the crowded room disappeared. It was just her and me, and the weight of everything unspoken between us. The director called the first students. My stomach twisted as each one played, some confident, some timid, all of them better than I felt. When my name was announced, my knees nearly buckled. I stepped onto the stage, the violin trembling in my hands. The lights blinded me, and the hush of the crowd pressed down like a weight. I searched the audience, desperate for an anchor, and there she was, Lena, standing at the side of the stage. Her eyes met mine, steady, unwavering. I raised the bow. The first note cracked. My heart sank, but I remembered her voice. "Don't punish the note. Invite the next one." So I did. Slowly, the melody found shape. Imperfect, yes, but honest. The tremor in my hands eased as I locked onto Lena's gaze. It felt like she was playing with me, her invisible accompaniment stitching my faltering notes into something whole. When the final note faded, the applause surprised me. It wasn't thunderous, but it was kind. I bowed quickly, my face flushed, and hurried off stage. Lena was waiting. "You were beautiful," she said. I squeaked, I muttered. "You breathed," she corrected. Her eyes glistened, pride shimmering there. "And you told a story. That's all that matters." Before I could reply, Rachel appeared. "That was touching," she said coolly, her eyes fixed on Lena. "I wonder which part of the story was yours, Lena, the teachers or the students?" The sting of her words froze me in place. Lena's jaw tightened, but she held her ground. "Rachel, this isn't the time." Rachel's smirk cut through me. "It never is it? You blur lines until someone gets hurt. Haven't you learned?" Heat flooded my cheeks. I wanted to speak, to defend Lena, but fear choked me. Instead, I stepped aside, gripping my case like a shield. The rest of the evening passed in a haze. Students performed, parents clapped, the director gave speeches, but all I felt was the weight of Rachel's accusations and the silence between Lena and me. After the showcase, I slipped out into the cool night air, needing space. The city hummed around me, cars passing, rain starting to fall, but my thoughts were louder than everything. I was halfway down the block when I heard her. "Ava, wait." I turned. Lena hurried toward me, her coat unbuttoned, her hair damp from the drizzle. She looked more vulnerable than I had ever seen her. "You don't have to explain," I began, but she shook her head. "Yes, I do. Rachel's words, they're meant to wound, not to warn. But she's not wrong about one thing." My heart stumbled. "What do you mean?" Her eyes locked onto mine, intense and searching. "I've blurred the line. I've let something grow here that I wasn't supposed to. And it's not just you who's confused, I am too." Her honesty stole my breath. The streetlight flickered above us, rain pattering softly between pauses in her words. "I tried to keep you at a distance," she continued. "But every time you play, every time you look at me like you did tonight, I feel something I can't ignore. And if I keep pretending it's just about music, I'll lose myself." I didn't know what to say. My heart raced with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. I had imagined her confessing something like this, but hearing it, feeling it, was overwhelming. "Lena," my voice faltered. She stepped closer, her hand lifting as though to touch my cheek, then hesitating in the air. "Tell me I'm not alone in this." The world seemed to hold its breath. I could hear my pulse in my ears, the rain against the pavement, the faint murmur of a saxophone player somewhere down the street. I opened my mouth, ready to tell her everything, that I thought about her constantly, that her presence had unraveled and rebuilt me in equal measure. But before I could speak, a sharp voice cut through the night. "Lena!" Rachel stood at the corner, her umbrella tilted, her eyes narrowed. Lena froze, torn between me and the woman who still held pieces of her past. And I was left trembling, caught between desire and doubt, the words unsaid burning in my throat. Rachel's voice pierced the night, and for a moment Lena stood frozen, torn between two lives, the one she had lived and the one that was unfolding in front of her. My chest ached as I watched her hesitation. Rain streaked across her face like tears, though I knew they weren't. "Lena," Rachel said again, sharper now. "We need to talk." Lena turned to her, her shoulders stiff. "Rachel, not tonight." But Rachel's gaze slid to me. "This is exactly what I warned them about. Boundaries blurred. Students confused." Something inside me snapped. My voice trembled, but I found strength in the storm. "I'm not confused," I said. "I know what I feel." Both women looked at me, startled. My heart hammered against my ribs, but the words spilled out. "I came here for music, yes. But somewhere between the scales and the silence, I found more. I found someone who saw me, who made me believe I could belong." I turned fully to Lena, my breath shaky. "That's you. And I don't care who knows it." Rachel's mouth opened, then closed. For once, she had no retort. She shook her head, muttering something I couldn't catch, and walked away into the rain, her umbrella a fading shadow. Silence followed. The only sound was the soft drizzle and my own thundering pulse. Lena stared at me, her expression unreadable. Finally she spoke, her voice low, trembling. "You don't know what this could cost me." "I know," I said. "But I also know what it costs to keep pretending." Her eyes glistened and she stepped closer, so close I could feel the warmth of her even through the damp chill. "Ava, when you play, I see pieces of myself I thought I had lost. I shouldn't let that happen. I told myself you were only a student, that it was only lessons. But it isn't. It never was." Her confession landed like a melody I had been waiting my whole life to hear. My throat tightened. Then stopped fighting it. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then, slowly, she lifted her hand and cupped my cheek. The touch was gentle, reverent, as though she feared I would vanish if she pressed too hard. My eyes closed, a tear slipping free, and when I opened them again, she was smiling faintly through her own tears. "I've been afraid," she admitted. "Afraid of Rachel, of the board, of myself. But standing here with you, I realize the only thing I should fear is losing this." I leaned into her touch, my voice barely steady. "Then don't lose it." She kissed me. Soft at first, tentative, but then deeper, filled with all the words we had left unsaid, all the tension of weeks finally breaking open. The rain fell harder, soaking us both, but we didn't care. The world could have ended around us, and I would have still clung to that moment. When we pulled apart, I laughed through tears. I guess that's one way to blur boundaries. Lena laughed too, the sound lighter than I had ever heard from her. Maybe it's time to stop worrying about the lines and start living the music. We walked back to the conservatory together, dripping wet, our hands brushing until they finally locked. For once, neither of us pulled away. Inside, the hall was empty, the echoes of the showcase still hanging in the air. Lena sat at the piano, her fingers dancing across the keys. She nodded at me. "Play with me." I lifted my violin. The notes were uneven, but tonight they didn't matter. What mattered was how they blended with hers, imperfect yet whole, like two voices finally daring to sing the same song. When the last note faded, we sat in silence, smiling through exhaustion and relief. I knew tomorrow would bring questions, complications, maybe even consequences. But in that moment, I felt unshakable. Because love, like music, wasn't about perfection. It was about courage. Some loves begin in silence, in the spaces between notes, where fear and desire collide. This was mine, with Lena, in a rain-soaked street, where I finally learned that honesty is braver than hesitation. And maybe that's the question for you. What truths are you holding back? What melodies in your heart are you too afraid to play? If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Share it with someone who believes in love, in courage, and in the power of music to bring people together. Because sometimes, the most beautiful symphonies are the ones we never expected to play.